Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Performing Arts series brought to you by the Kennedy Center and by the Prince William Network. I'm Billy Taylor, and I play the piano, and I'm joined by Chip Jackson, who plays the bass, and Winard Harper, who plays the drums. We're the Billy Taylor Trio, and we're jazz musicians, and it's important to us to speak to you in the language that we know best, the language of jazz. We find that music allows us to say many things which we cannot put into words, and we hope that you'll understand what we're saying and respond to the feelings that we're trying to express. And it's an important aspect of our tradition for those of us who are older and more experienced to share what we have learned with younger musicians. And we've traveled all over the world together and separately too, and taken jazz to many places we never even dreamed of when we were your age. You know, we found that there are people in many of those places that around the world who don't enjoy the freedom of speech that we take for granted here in the United States. Today, we want to use that freedom to show you several young friends of ours, and we want to show you how we use, and them, we want to show you all how we use the music to share our feelings with others. And today, these three musicians are very special, the next generation of jazz musicians, and they are Christian Stands on piano. Renee, oh my goodness, Renée Cruz on bass. How about that? Carroll Vaughn Dashiell III on drums. Now, much of the music we play and much of the music we'll hear today will be spontaneously improvised. And a performer who has every performer has a couple of ways to go about doing things. You can select what you're going to play by playing vertically. That is, you can take the chords and sort of put them together, put the notes together, and do something with it, as Coleman Hawkins used to do. Or Lester Young did something totally different. What he would do is to just take melodies and kind of string the melodies together. Now, these young people are going to demonstrate some of the things that I just said in a different way when they begin to play. Now, you can develop a melody by expanding a motif and really doing something very special with it. Now, before I go any further, though, I want to remind you that this program is interactive, and you have an opportunity, those of you who are here, have an opportunity to ask questions, and those of us who are listening and looking at us on another media, then you can, later in the broadcast, you can use your 800 number or your email address, which will be appearing on your screen, and we'll get to your questions too. But right now, let's get started with what we call a master class, because what I'm going to do is to talk to musicians, and the other members of the trio are going to do the same thing. And what we do is to share some of the things that some of the things that we've done when we've played with various groups around the world. And we're going to do that right here with you. So we'd like to introduce the first musician, Christian Sands, here. And Christian, you've worked with me up at University of Massachusetts, and I really was impressed by many of the things that, as a very young man, you could do in terms of the technique that you've developed and so forth. You have a good facility to doing things. You get on the instrument with a great deal of ease. How long have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing for at least 15 years.
At least. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you are not much older than that. I mean, okay. Now, the idea of a young man being able to play with the verve and feeling that you have, that came about with a lot of practice. What inspired you? Who did you listen to learn how to play?
Well, I listened to a lot of Fats Waller first. Well, let me explain this. Lately, I've been trying to figure out where most of the music has come from. So I looked back to the 20s and 30s and before then, and looked at all the piano players like Fats Waller, Willie the Lion Smith, people like that. And I try to progress my way up through generations. So now I'm up to Herbie Hancock.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Well, you've covered a lot of time. As a matter of fact, if you've gone all the way from the early days to Herbie Hancock, you've gone through about 100 years already. So that's pretty quick. In terms of the earlier styles, is there one of those styles was stride piano? Mm-hmm. Can you do that at all?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now he wasn't even thought of when they were talking about doing this kind of piano. Now, so to go back and learn how to do it. First of all, you're playing stride. You're doing with your left hand, which means that you're playing with both hands, doing different things. And that was people like Fats Waller, as you said, and so many of the things that you play. You mentioned Herbie Hancock and others. You play things in chords and play something just showing the harmonic structure of what we were talking about, so that people can hear what you do harmonically.
Well, for instance, I can do a C major chord, basic C major chord. I can change that, make it a C sus, or things like that, like a C sharp 11.
Say it in the mic.
Oh, sorry, C sharp 11, or I'm not sure what you would call that chord, but it's something with the C.
So now wait a minute. Let's start again. Now, start if you do exactly what you did, and now start on one note and build that chord for me that you were talking about.
Okay.
No. Tell people what you're doing.
All right. So C, now I play a G, that kind of thing, and then wherever you want to take it from there. I mean, you can pretend. Depends on the mood. Maybe you want to make it happy or sad or confused or.
Now play the whole chord. That's different. That's different. They're very full. Now, you do that. You take just a single chord like that and put it together with other chords and get a very contemporary style of playing. One of the things that I was impressed by you is that you take a piece of music that is new and say, well, what can I do with this? And you say, just take something special. So one of the things that I'd like to do is just take one of a tune, pick a tune of one of the persons you talked about, okay, and just demonstrate how a person impressed you with playing for just one chorus, just. Okay. Wow. Well, I'm delighted that you have really begun to research the jazz masters on the piano, and you look at things that have been done before and build your own ideas around the things that you've learned. You are going to play a piece that I wrote, which is part of a suite that I wrote for symphony orchestra. Now you're going to boil the whole thing down from the symphony, all those symphony guys playing, to what you can do on the piano with that same melody and harmony and so forth. So tell me what you're going to do.
Well, I just forgot your tune, what the name of it is, but it is your tune.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, Côte d'Ivoire.
Côte d'Ivoire. It's French Côte d'Ivoire, and it's for the Ivory Coast. When I first wrote this, I did this and dedicated it to the president of the Ivory Coast because he was a guest at the White House and it was a big deal. So I said that was fine. But anyway, what are you gonna do?
Well, I'm gonna play an intro first, and then by myself, and then the bass and the drums are gonna come in, and they're gonna play time, and then we're gonna go into the head, which is the melody, then do a solo, and then take it out, and then end it.
Good. All right. Now he's gonna do all that right now. Thank you.
All right. Well, I enjoyed that. I think we all enjoyed that. Yeah. You know, I'd like to talk to you about a little bit about one of the new young bass players on the scene. And, you know, she's currently a graduate student at the Juilliard Music School in New York City. So that's pretty cool in itself. So let's say hello to Renée Cruz.
Hi.
Yeah, you know, I met Renee when she was a student at the Betty Carter Jazz Ahead program at the Kennedy Center last year. And, you know, what we do there and what we're doing here today is like a continuation of a tradition that's called mentoring. And it's where, you know, young and up-and-coming generations of musicians can learn from those of us who've been around for a while and spend some time with, on the bandstand with so many of the masters of this music. And now it's our turn to kind of pass on some of that to these really young people here. So, you know, let's get to know Renee a little bit. Renee, how did you get interested in music and, you know, jazz in particular?
Well, Chip, like most of these guys here on the bandstand, I come from a musical family. And so I was introduced basically since birth, just having music all around the house, all kinds of music, jazz music, R&B, classical, all different types. And then actually there was one instance where I first noticed the sound of the upright bass and identified it as such. That was when I was, I think, 15, turning 16. And I was listening to the record Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. I'd heard the record lots of times, but I just didn't know what that warm, beautiful sound was exactly. And then it dawned on me that it was the upright bass, of course, and I was very fascinated by it.
Yeah, well, you know, the bass is a cool instrument.
That's right.
You know, some might think it's a bit unusual for a woman to be playing the bass. So what are your feelings about that?
Well, I don't think it's unusual just because I chose it and I love it for the sound. My sister plays the drums also, so we both play sort of, you know, they're not your typical female instruments like associated like the flute or the piano, for example. Actually, every day when I walk on the street with my bass, I hear the same thing. And it just, you know, everyone who tells me, I guess, thinks that they're the first person that thought of it, but they say, "Don't you wish you chose a violin, honey?" And I mean, if I wanted to play the violin, I would, or the flute for that matter, but I think that, you know, ladies should choose whatever instrument they want to play and not have an instrument dictated to them.
Right. Well, these are modern times. You know, a lot of times bass players, you know, play mostly a supportive role. That's what the bass does a lot of times. And, you know, in jazz, we hear a lot of what's called walking bass, where the bass lays the foundation of the harmony and the time by playing quarter notes in 4/4 time. So could you play for us some blues, some walking bass on some blues, and put your own personal spin on it for us?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd say she was putting some of her own personal spin on that. You know, that's a good, cool thing about jazz. You can put your own personality into the music and kind of make it up as you go along. You know, nowadays in contemporary music, bass players aren't relegated to just playing only a supportive role. So, you know, the bass can play the melodies as well. We can have a lot of fun with that. So can you play a piece for us where you play the melody of the piece?
Okay, I'd like to play a piece entitled Bohemia After Dark. It's by a bassist named Oscar Pettiford. So you could take note of that name. He's a giant of the bass. And Dr. Taylor performed extensively with Oscar Pettiford. And this piece actually was written around the late 40s, early 50s. And that just gives you an idea of the kind of foresight that Oscar Pettiford had in using the bass as a melodic instrument.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, well, Oscar would be proud. That's good. One of the things about Pettiford was that he really had something that was very personal at a time when the bass was emerging as a solo instrument. Amplification, a lot of things were happening, so he had a tremendous amount of strength, so he played even without the amplifier, but when he got the amplifier, he really did some special things with it. And, go ahead.
Well, Billy has written a tune wrote a tune for Oscar Pettiford because you got to play a lot with Oscar Pettiford, right?
Yeah.
And there's this wonderful tune that you've written that's quite a challenge for Renee. It's a fairly complicated line, and it gives her a lot to work with because she plays not only the melody at the beginning, but then a supportive role behind the piano solo along with the drums, and then she takes her own solo in a melodic style, and then plays a cadenza, which is where she gets to stretch way out all by herself and do her thing. So let's hear Renee play Billy's tune called "One for the Woofer." Okay, Renee? Getting applause already. One, two, one, two.
Terrific. All right. Yeah.
Yes. Now, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce to you a young, talented man that I've known a long time. As a matter of fact, I've known his parents a very long time. His father and I had the pleasure of going to school together. And his father's a talented teacher and bassist and was one of the gentlemen helpful to me when I first came to the area. And I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Carroll Dashiell III, who likes to be called CV. CV, I'd like for you first to tell me about some of your musical experiences, how you learned to play, because I can remember seeing you when you were in high school, a freshman, playing with the college band and doing a wonderful job.
Well, as the story goes, my parents always wanted a musical family, and my sister's actually a musical theater arts major at A&T University in Greensboro, North Carolina. And then I came along, and they prayed that their oldest son would be a drummer. So lo and behold, here I come, and they said I had good reflexes, and they said that before I turned 2, that I would always go to the kitchen and get pots and pans out and arrange them like a drum set. And if I didn't like one, I'd put it back until I found the perfect pots and pans to make a drum set. So when I turned 2, I got my first drum set, and then they made me play a little piano growing up. And then when I got to middle school, I started to play and be introduced to more classical and wind ensemble type music. And then when I got to high school, I played in my father's big band, because he's director of jazz studies at East Carolina University down in Greenville, North Carolina. And I played in the big band down there for a couple years, and that's where I met you and Professor Jackson and Dr. Taylor. And you guys mentored me then there too. And played in the bands in there in high school and did all district and all state festivals. Played in the marching band, and then now I'm in college here in Washington, D.C., and junior jazz studies major at Howard University. So that's my story.
Yes. Now, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind telling us about some of your inspirations, guys that you like to listen to?
Well, my inspirations are, of course, the greats, Art Blakey, Max Roach, some of the newer guys, Brian Blade, Bill Stewart, some of the gospel drummers, Aaron Spears, Warren Jones, a lot of the funk greats, Clyde Stubblefield, Melvin Parker, Jabo John Starks, just all of them, Sonny Payne, try to touch on them all.
Yeah, it's very important for drummers to have a wide variety of listening and experiences so they can bring it to the music in any bands that they play in. And you've a lot of different guys. Can you also tell us about some of your favorite music to listen to?
Well, I try to listen to it all, because in school at Howard, they teach us to be well-rounded, and they definitely throw us through that. So listen to a lot of classical, listen to a lot of jazz, listen to a lot of go-go, because, that's what's popular around here, R&B. Just listen to it all. Country, because I'm from North Carolina, so gotta have some country in there a little bit. So I try to listen to it all.
Good. Now, I'll tell you what we like to do now is get you to think about all of that and put a good thing together for us that we can listen to, of giving us example of all your experiences a little bit. I tell you, when I first came to D.C., there was a rhythm that everybody had to learn how to play that I love to hear, and it's distinct to this area. But originally, it's an old West African rhythm. Can you play a little bit of the go-go for us? Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about this powerful art form, jazz music, is that the musicians take all of their experiences and all the music around them and make it part of their vocabulary. So I'd like to get you to do that on a particular composition. There's a composition of Dr. Taylor's that I love to play and love to hear, and it's a calypso, and you know you have to make that dance. This is one entitled Capricious.
Right now, I'd like all three of these young people to take a collective bow there. I think they did a very good job of. Thank you. As you can see, it's really is something that we have tried to put back into the system because these are young people who are going to carry on the tradition. As you can see, each one has something personal to say, playing the very things that those of us who are older are playing, but they put another spin on it. They do their own thing. You hear what the drummer's doing. He's got some other stuff going there, and piano's got some things. Takes my composition, then my composition, he turns it around and does something very special with it, which is exactly what is supposed to happen in jazz. Now, I'd like to invite the viewing audience to begin sending their questions to us. The phone number and email address is on your screen. And while we're kind of getting in the mood for that, and I'm going to collect some, have you come up with some questions too. And while we're doing that, I'm going to ask them to play another piece called Lonesome Lover. Now, this is just a tune that has, it starts with just a bass line, and she plays the bass line all through. So she's not doing things with that. But it's based on something very simple, very simple chords, very simple melody. Everything is simple about it, and it swings like this. All right. So you see, they can take something very simple and do something very special with it. We have an email from Hylton High School in Colorado, and how are jazz musicians looked upon now compared to the 1920s? Well, I guess I'm the only one up here that can compare back there. So, but one of the things that we are proudest of is young people like this, and we're looked on very favorably because we are teaching young people like this and working with young people like this. And so I'm very proud of the fact that people your age are joining the various groups that are playing jazz. And mostly you find it in schools, and you find it on the internet and places like that. And I'm delighted because we're doing some things. We'd like to answer some of the questions from the people right here. So you have a question for us?
How long?
What's your name first?
My name's Dee Dee.
Pardon me?
Dee Dee.
Edie.
Dee Dee.
Okay.
How long do you guys practice?
How long do you guys practice? Well, when I was your age, I used to have to practice about 8 hours a day because I like to do that. I'll ask these young people how much they practice. They probably do. Yeah, they're younger yet. How much do you practice a day?
Whenever I get a chance to, you know, being a student, you have homework and, you know, having a job and everything like that. So, but I try to practice at least an hour or 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't practice as much as I'd like to, because I'm busy at school, but I try to make a point to practice at least 2 hours a day.
Good. 2 hours a day, that's good.
But when I was not in school, I was practicing much more than that.
Good.
Along with what Renee said, because we're in college and, you know, we have other classes, I try to do between 2.5 to 3 hours a day, just depending on my classes and what I have going on.
Good. Good. Hey, no wonder you get to do what you do now. That's good. Thank you. Question. What advice would you give to musicians who want to learn to improvise? Well, I'll start with one of the guys in the group. Let's start with the drummer. I mean you.
Me?
Yeah. And then we'll go to him.
Well, let's see. Definitely practice and a lot of listening, because one of the most important things about this music is a language, and like learning any language, it's important to listen to the language so you get the nuances of it, understand the vocabulary. So a lot of listening and practicing and going out also to see people play the music is very important.
Absolutely. Chip?
Yeah, I think there are certain concepts of harmony and time and rhythm that, you know, you can kind of get if you want to play improvised music. And they're a little bit different from, say, classical music or, you know, other kinds of music. So, but like Winard said, to go out and hear it live and, you know, hear it rather than be reading it on the paper is the most important thing in order to get a grip on those concepts.
Terrific. Thank you. Yes. What is your name?
I'm Jamila Wood, and my question for you is, who are some of your favorite jazz artists?
So who are some of my favorite jazz artists? Yeah. Or everybody?
No, yours.
Oh, me. Well, I have, when I was growing up, my favorite pianist was Art Tatum. He was a wonderful pianist who played all over the piano and did just marvelous things. And so I wanted to play like he played. And so I became his protege, and I began to learn many of the things that he did as a wonderful artist. But the idea of what each person does, in jazz, you really take all of the things that are around you. And I took Fats Waller, I took many other people who didn't sound like Art Tatum, but some of my classical, I studied classical music too. So I wanted to incorporate Johann Sebastian Bach in some of the things that I did. So I used him too. So a lot of people influenced me. Yes, ma'am.
Do you write any of like music like to the students?
I'm sorry.
Do the students write any music like by themselves?
Oh yeah. So let's talk to them about that. Do you have written things, Christian? What are some of the things you've written?
Well, I've written numerous tunes for different occasions, you know, for weddings, you know, birthday. You know, it just depends on the mood and what you're feeling at that time. I mean, I've written songs for like my friends, family, you know, pets, you know, anything like that.
How about you, CV?
I'm starting to now with I'm getting more advanced in my my jazz studies classes, but I'm just kind of starting off. So.
And how about you?
Yes, I compose and also arrange other people's
Save you
compositions.
for last because I knew that.
and I had a great experience getting to work on my original composition at the Betty Carter Jazz Ahead program with Dr. Billy Taylor and Professor Chip Jackson and Professor Winard Harper, where we got to workshop all our originals and then perform them at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, that was fun listening to you. That was. The people, from emails, how long have you been performing for student audiences? I've been performing for student audiences for about 40 years because it really was something that a long time ago, in working with a lot of people, I found that it was very important to, as a student, to work through things, but to know other people and to get to audiences like you and to play for you and talk to you and let you know that what we do, try to explain what we do and make it easier for you to understand why we work so hard at some of the things we do. Well, it looks like we've just about run out of time, and I'd like to thank our young musicians, Christian, Renee, and Carroll, who has been, all of them have been just, well, hey, how about another hand for these young people? I mean, yeah. And I'd like for you to give a separate hand for the other two members of my trio, because they are excellent teachers and they have been showing the Thank you. And this is because this is the thing that all of us relate to, as I said in the very beginning of this program. You know, Winard, Chip, and myself, we would like to thank the students in the auditorium for being with us today. So let's give them a hand. We'll give you a hand. Join us giving you a hand. It's you know, it's a give and thing for us, a give and take thing for us, because one of the things that we like to do is to have you experience the kind of things that we want to share with you, and we're delighted that you received us so well. So thank you very much. And one of the things that we'd like to do, just as before we close, is to, as I said, to thank each and every one of you, and hope that you'll listen in a little different way from some of the things. Hearing young people your age who play so well, you know the kinds of things that can be done. So, you know, I expect some of you to be doing that kind of thing.
If you didn't get a chance to ask a question today, contact us by using the email address on your screen. We'd love to hear from you. Visit the Kennedy Center website for additional information about this program and upcoming programs, as well as other information on integrating the arts into your curriculum. Our next program will be broadcast via satellite and the web on Thursday, January 11, and will feature cast members from the Kennedy Center's production of the classic musical MAME. We hope you'll join us.